Grok just released spicy mode, right? And so it's not safe for work version of their large language model chat. And I wonder, as I read that, was not, hey, is this safe or is this appropriate? I wondered, is this their way around the hallucinations and the pushback they're getting with some of the inappropriate content that's being produced by the large language models?
In a world defined by relentless innovation and geopolitical shifts, understanding what's truly next is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. This is RTX, the future. Your guides through tomorrow's complex landscape are two individuals with unparalleled insight. Jay Mazzelli, co-founder and CEO of Red Thread X, a retired Army colonel and a veteran leader in defense and technology innovation, brings decades of experience from the front lines of strategic development. Nate Platts, an active duty lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, actively shaping future capabilities through advanced data and strategic sustainment. Together, Jay and Nate offer a rare vantage point, having advised at the highest levels, navigated complex technological revolutions, and influenced the strategic implications of innovation long before they hit the mainstream. On RTX, the future, they cut through the noise to deliver the unvarnished truth about what's coming, why it matters, and what you can do about it. Stop guessing. Start knowing.
What's going on, Jay?
Hey, Nate, how you doing, man?
I am doing well. Excited to kick off this next podcast.
Hey, let's get this going, man.
Yeah, let's do it. We're talking about a couple exciting things going on. First, we just wrapped a report, right? We just wrapped our second quarter report, the Proactive Quarter, and the name of the report is Love Anticipating Robots, which I'm pretty excited about. The cover's phenomenal. B did a great job, and it's going to be a great read, I think.
Yeah, it's a mind-blowing concept with that title, and it ties so well within all the content that we've got in the report. And I don't want to get ahead of the report release coming up, but it's very, very close.
Yeah, we are going to continue the momentum of humanity at a crossroads with technology, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of pivotal to that. It's been central. We haven't really talked about artificial intelligence in depth. We've kind of talked around it and what it means, and I think we're going to dive a little deeper into that topic today. But it's centered mostly around how just how AI is everywhere and it's kind of prevalent or just infused in our day-to-day lives. But how does it impact our sense of purpose and our sense of identity?
Yeah, AI has unsurprisingly certainly had profound changes on humanity, but also what's occurred in the last 90 days. There's so much that's happened, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's kick it off. Let's get into it. Exponential advancement. I think that's the understatement of the century, or at least of the last 90 days. It's dwarfing pretty much everything. You can't have a conversation without, hey, how is AI affecting that? How is AI going to become part of that? How is AI replacing the routine tasks and potentially the jobs within that industry? And every entity, every industry that is anything is looking at how do I utilize this to increase my profits, increase my efficiency, and provide a better product.
And it's become so integral in virtually every aspect of our existence. I read a short article today that was lamenting the changes from Chat GPT 4.0 to 5.0. And it was talking about the users who liked the 4.0 experience so much that they were deeply saddened when we had that advancement from 4.0 to 5.0, regardless of the additional technology gains or energy efficiency or anything else. So the notion of getting saddened by an advancement of technology because of your comfort level, your familiarity, that's pretty intriguing and definitely warrants a look at in terms of how closely humanity and AI are becoming integrated.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of months ago, I think, with the personal and the emotional connections people were forming with chatbots. And I think that, kind of speaks to that is there's a comfort level associated with the outputs with, hey, I know the prompts, I know all these things, I know what to expect. I don't see a lot of people forming attachments to, is this correct? Is this accurate? Is this factually, prudence? It's, hey, this is really easy. I know how to make this efficient. And, you wonder on the emotional side how that's working. I think one of the things that's really interesting in this is not how fast it's progressing, but, what's regulating this progression and the ethical concerns for that. I have a lot of thoughts on the advancements of these large language models and the lack of regulation associated with that. There's a couple that I want to bring up because they are so prone to hallucinations, and there's been kind of some pushback or some discussions on, hey, some of the stuff they're saying is, A, not age appropriate, or hey, it's a little off topic or a little taboo, or that's just out of left field. Grok just released spicy mode, right? And so it's not safe for work version of their large language model chat. And I wonder, as I read that, was not, hey, is this safe or is this, appropriate? I wondered, is this their way around the hallucinations and the pushback they're getting with some of the inappropriate content that's being produced by the large language models by saying, hey, if you say, yes, I'm okay using this not safe for work or spicy mode large language model, then the onus of the responsibility for what that large language model produces is kind of pushed onto the customer, right? The company can then say, yeah, I know it said that, but it's spicy mode. It's supposed to be spicy. It's not supposed to be safe. It's one of the things I thought of when I first heard of that.
That's a really interesting point, Nate. And that could tie into the lack, especially in the United States, of any governance or regulation over the AI industry. And I understand it is moving fast, and we're seeing a lot of private capital investing in AI, a lot of the infrastructure coming from private capital companies as well. But I think it's creating huge vulnerability as well, and that is who's watching the watchman, if you would, when it comes to AI development and the safeguards. And any number of experts in the field are saying we don't truly understand how it works or how it learns, and at the same time, we're taking all the guardrails down.
Yeah, we don't understand how it works. Like, people can't explain what's in the models or why the models work. That's the scariest part, right? I think we use this and intuitively we're like, someone smart put this together and they understand what goes into this and how it's thinking. And you peek behind the curtain and everyone's like, I really don't know how it's working. And I think that's where I get a little hesitant towards where this is going and how fast this changes. And I again go back to, is the offer of a spicy mode their way of saying, hey, the responsibility is kind of pushed down to the consumer of, yeah, it might not be the best answer, but it's a funny answer or an off-topic answer because you said you wanted the off-topic answer. It kind of removes the responsibility of providing a safe product. So if it gives you an answer on, something that's anti-Semitic, or on, pick a topic and how to make a bomb or whatever, it's like, yeah, this is the spicy mode thing. You consented when you said, I want to use that.
Right. Going back well to the very beginning of our podcast series when we talked about what does that end user license agreement say when you sign it. And generally, you're not reading it, you're scrolling to the bottom, you're clicking and moving on because you want to get at some app or some feature.
Or you just want to check it out and see how it works, right? Like, yeah, I'll say yes just to see, a couple prompts from this LLM to see if it's funny. I watched a video on YouTube and there was someone that was using it in their Tesla to give voice navigation directions. And spicy is an understatement for some of the commentary that was coming back. It was pretty interesting. This also goes to, as we get I'd say the overabundance and the saturation of these large language models and AI and artificial intelligence. There's that dead internet theory, right? Internet's becoming kind of a dumpster fire for agents and disinformation and AI slop. And you know, there's probably an event horizon or like a tipping point for where this is truly useful and makes our lives better or makes our work more efficient, to where it's just noise and it's so distracting that we get absorbed by it and we form emotional attachments to a version that was released 3 months ago. And somehow I'm so comfortable with it that it's going to affect my day to day when it's updated.
An idea that's just starting to emerge is the slow internet, which is the human only internet where you can validate that all the inputs are actually coming from people and not from all this automation that you just described. Not something I've researched yet, not something we included in this last report, but as we look laterally, how quarter to quarter and year to year to connect, it's another thing for us to examine.
No, that is in line with the dumb phones though, and the push from especially Gen Z and millennials to go back to the old school Razor, or the Kyocera brick that I used to have when I was in college and was indestructible, but was also not as user friendly as my iPhone is today. A couple other, there's some leading companies that are in this space. Obviously, you have XAI, you have OpenAI, Microsoft, IBM. Everyone who's anyone in the tech space has an AI element. Meta, right? Google, it's Amazon. It's I say beyond prevalent.
And the alarming part is, I'm going to say, the blind trust we collectively, and when I say we, I mean individuals all the way through governments are putting into tech titans to really be the responsible ones in the room. And Tristan Harris had some really interesting insights on that. And I don't want to get ahead of the report and some of the analysis there, but when he did his TED Humanity Reimagined talk in April 2025, he had some really keen insights about who is actually being the responsible adult. And he paused and he basically said, "It's us." He was talking to a room of our age. And he's like, "We are the ones that have to, we can't look around for someone else to take responsibility and do this. It falls on us to provide that responsibility because it's not going to come out of the tech corporations."
No, no corporation in history has self-regulated themselves out of profit or out of growth. That's not what I would expect from a responsible company, right? Like that's not inherent in how we have structured capitalism or growth ventures for businesses. It is the responsibility of the government, and you can get into a political debate on size and scope and responsibility of the government. But at its core thesis, government is supposed to protect the people, and that's, I think, part of the conversation that needs to be had. I'm not taking a hard line stance on, hey, this is where it's dangerous, this is where it's not, but I don't see that conversation happening a lot. I think that's what's concerning to me.
But here's a counterpoint. And we've drifted a little bit into some of the downsides. And I'd like to come back to how some of the upsides are emerging as well, to include the competition between companies is really giving us some quality products out there. And so, yes, we were beating up almost say tech titans as a whole, but there's been some really interesting emerging technology as well, leveraging the capabilities and strengths of AI. So what are some of the things you've seen?
Oh my God, I can go on forever as I just, murdered them on, hey, I'm concerned about all these things. But here's the way I love AI, right? Like, I mean, I used an AI chatbot to help me produce the outline for this podcast that we're talking about right now. And rather than spend, an hour or two summarizing the thoughts that we've already put down over this report, it was like, hey, can you summarize the work I've already done? Yeah, here it is in 5 minutes. Edit that. Incredibly time saving, right? I'm able to now have dinner with my family, put my kids to bed, hop on this podcast with you. So I love it there. Um, Anytime I need to synthesize a large amount of information, or make a process more efficient, or find time to save my time, there is nothing better than using either an AI agent or one of the AI tools that's available.
We're seeing some really interesting emerging technologies as well through specialization now that these tools are getting so well refined. One of the ones that really caught my attention was Google and the AI models they're using to provide greater than satellite resolution of detail on Earth with the Alpha Earth Foundation, where they can get such quality of data and aggregate it and analyze it that we now have better maps of the Earth from synthesized AI data than we do from satellites flying overhead.
Remember when Google Earth first came out and you were like zooming into a city, like I can see a building, you know, like we're at the point where you can almost read license plates, and that's for the commercial grade, right? Like that's, I use Google Maps, Google Earth. I use some kind of mapping software every day. Even though I drive pretty much the same route, it tells me what traffic problems there are. It tells me where there's construction, where to avoid. Like it is one of the probably most passive uses of artificial intelligence that I use on a daily basis. I love it.
And so it's really good to see where it's starting to integrate in some of these, I'll say almost transparent and highly beneficial ways that really do bring a lot of good opportunity for us.
I think, kind of going on a lateral instance or use case that's not necessarily thought of or talked about in the mainstream a lot is agriculture and what is happening in, the world of farming. John Deere, you wouldn't really think of them as a leader of AI, but they're pretty big in this thing called Agriculture 4.0. It's using artificial intelligence for autonomous farming with the goal of having that be the leading way to farm by 2030. And artificial intelligence and machine learning are essential into that.
And the underlying data, and the fact that we now really require professionals in the agriculture industry to be data experts as well to leverage that technology.
Yeah, we quoted a farmer from a report in our forthcoming report that said, farming, if you don't have the data, you can't farm for profit anymore. To paraphrase that quote, that was a pretty, someone from Iowa who grew up, in the middle of farms all around. Data was not something that people talked about down at the local VFW. I promise you that when I was a kid. I think one of the other areas, and we've talked about this a lot, but it needs to be said because I think it's going to revolutionize a lot of the advancements in healthcare, is what AI is doing to drug discovery, prescription medicine creation, targeted medicines, acceleration of R&D, which reduces costs or maybe increases profits, or hopefully both. But that work by Recursion, by in silico medicine, Zarya Therapeutics, name anything. The way they're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to speed the advancements of some of these revolutionary drugs is pretty phenomenal.
Right. And an interesting subset of that that caught my attention is how AI is allowing us to repurpose drugs as well. So drugs that were designed for a specific reason, maybe pulled because side effects or something like that. Now we're seeing that that may actually have benefit towards other conditions. And so drugs that are 60, 70, 80 years old are getting pulled back off the shelves and repurposed to great effect.
Yeah, and I think the next phase of this, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but there's not enough to sink our teeth into. And I'm hoping in a couple weeks or maybe even a couple months we can really dive in. Is this wetware concept, where not using silicone chip as the baseline for the computer, but using biomaterial, really literally human neurons, and how that changes the speed and the effectiveness of AI models and how they learn. And there are companies called Final Spark or Cortical Labs that we've kind of touched on in the past, but they're using these neural computers, and you can literally rent space on the cloud. But for drug discovery, for anything dealing with biological problem sets, and putting AI within that wetware computer to change fundamentally how we're able to solve and apply these models towards biomedicine, biotechnology. It's pretty awesome.
And that particular technology is also remarkably energy efficient as we look at all the pressures on energy grids to source data centers and AI computing.
Oh man, I can't wait to have that conversation. I think that's coming up in one or two episodes. But the energy discussion, what's going on there, is so pivotal to the advancements we're seeing in technology. AI, the energy demands for AI are insatiable and are going to become almost problematic in the next 10 years. And one of the things that I don't think people are talking about enough is, if you go to a wetware service, it uses like 1/100th, 1/1 millionth the energy requirements of a typical computer. And if you can match the same compute power using wetware as a service, um, there's some pretty awesome implications for energy savings, for the environment, for, I mean, you name it. It's the potential there is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And I do want to double back on the drug piece really quickly and do a teaser for one of our forthcoming episodes when we talk about advancements in the space sector and the pivotal race to the space economy. And
Oh
we
yeah.
won't talk in great detail about it, but we have mentioned this company before. But the fact that we can now design drugs with advancements like AI and machine learning that may or may not be manufacturable on Earth, but have microgravity manufacturing facilities in space also increases the availability because we can make things that were previously unmanufacturable.
So where do we see this going, in the next 5 years or so? So uh, by 2030, the World Economic Forum projects a 41% global workforce reduction due to AI. That's a significant drop, right? And there's humanity discussions, there's um, mattering discussions that we're going to touch on that all kind of stem from that, but that's a really big drop just from AI.
And in my mind, when we think about that specific problem set, there's a very important operative term. Um, I think most people would say AI is going to replace a worker. I personally use the term displace because you talked about mattering, you talked about the humanity aspect. When AI and automation take a role, you still have a human who's looking for not only a sense of purpose, but they're looking for an income and to provide. And in Scott Galloway, he had a definition of masculinity that we cover in the report where he talks about protector, provider, procreator. And that AI piece is going to put a lot of pressure that you just described. If 41% of the workforce is displaced, we're still going to have people alive on the planet who are still going to need to provide for themselves, their families, protect them, and everything else. And it's going to create a number of downstream effects that I don't think we fully yet realize.
Yes. And this is always the kind of counterpoint that I like to bring up that I'm not sure is as widely discussed is, let's say it displaces 41% of the workforce. this is an industrial revolution that we've seen, happen in cyclical events throughout our history. And so when the automobile came on, right, it displaced an entire, division of labor that we never considered. We used to get around in horse-drawn, wagons, and people that tended horses and that had hay and that made saddles and that built those wagons. That was an entire economy that was just, predicated on the fact that we moved and we transported via a horse-drawn wagon. That was essentially eradicated very quickly. And the economy actually boomed as a result because things got closer, more accessible. We had alternate ways to move about, not just the city, not just the county, the state, but the country, right? We built highways. Jobs were produced due to the lack of jobs because of a technological displacement. And so I think 41% of jobs being replaced by AI is absolutely something that we need to consider strongly. But if nothing else changes, that's a really bad thing. I'm excited to see how we respond as humans and what new job growth happens because of it, what new productivity becomes, and how the economy is propelled forward because of the opportunities that come with AI.
All right, so you're a nerd. I'm a nerd.
Huge nerd.
I've got a nerd challenge for you.
Okay.
Let's do a podcast special. Let's take some time and do the research. Let's focus on the laws of entropy and the workforce in the age of AI.
I like that. Yeah.
Let's just, because as you were describing that, the notion of the laws of entropy and the finiteness of energy in the universe, but the displacement of it, and there's a lot of really interesting ways that how does the workforce morph with AI and automation?
Yeah. Where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity?
Yep.
Right? I mean, we just talked about energy, right? There's going to be a shitload more energy centers and data centers that are going to be required to feed this beast. And that's going to be a shortage. And so I think that's a really good idea for us to dig into. I'm actually excited to jump into that topic and do some research.
Yeah, I like it.
Going back to like the next 5 years, biotechnology, we talked about that. I think the acceleration that's going to come from that is going to be pretty awesome. And then, I know we're going to deep dive this in a mattering section for podcasts, but this rise of the mirror world and this data rich digital twin physical world. But, what does this rapid rise of AI and this, abundance of data mean for the human connection and mean for our sense of value, right? And so we talk about in the report, people's sense of self is pretty important to how they interact with those around them. And if, a big part of adulthood is, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. And if that's taken away, what becomes of that person, a person's identity, a group of people potentially. And the hardest individuals to transition are those in the mid-career or something that's replaced for them. Early adopters, young people that are natives to this new AI landscape, not worried about them. But if someone is in their middle of their career and it's displaced, that's a hard gap that they have to close now to be relevant and to find meaning. So I think that's going to be pretty exciting.
I agree, and that's going to come crashing to a head, and we've already talked about it with the longevity paradox of people living longer, living more healthy lifestyles, and not necessarily exiting the workforce at the upper end of the age spectrum.
Absolutely. That's I think that's where there's risk, and I think we dive into that in a later episode. It'd be pretty exciting. 10 years, fully autonomous industries, right? We might see, if John Deere is successful in creating autonomous farming by 2030, or whenever they create it. Like, what if farming becomes virtually autonomous? We've done some look and we've done some, research into fuel companies that have modular fuel services that provide the ability to refine fuel with literally zero employees on site. They can do it from a computer. All they need is an internet connection and feedstock, and they can produce fuel. Versus, typical refineries employ hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Now, they're much larger, but that's an autonomous system that provides a similar service that's almost as comparable. I think there's going to be some incredible growth in the cylinder economy. We talked about that last episode, but AI is going to enable that growth, and it's going to just boom. $1.8 trillion of worth or value in that space by 2035. Like, I can't wait to see what happens there.
Yeah. So Nate, this is another great discussion. I love the fact that we highlighted just a couple of those initial conclusions that are going to be drivers of the content in this next report. And I'm really looking forward to what we're going to cover here during season 2.
Yeah, I can't wait to. I mean, I could keep going. This is awesome.
Yes, it is. Take care.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome, Jay. As always, it's been fun.
All right. Cheers.